I want to bring in Steve Mulroy, the Shelby County District Attorney, dealing with this very investigation down there in Memphis. Steve, it's good to see you this evening. There are a lot of questions being asked about what happened to Tyre Nichols and when the public might be able to see this video for themselves. Any idea when it will be released, and what are the considerations to do so?
Right. Well, thank you for having me, Laura. A lot of the people's questions about what exactly happened will, of course, be answered once people see the video. We expect that to happen this week or next week. We want to make sure that we get far enough along in our investigations that the investigation isn't compromised by premature release of the video. And just to be very concrete about that, if in a case like this, or really any case, Laura, if you are going to interview a suspect, you don't want the suspect to be able to see the video and then tailor their statements to law enforcement based on what they've seen, because now they know what you've got. And even non-suspect witnesses, there's a risk that rather than telling law enforcement what they actually saw with their own eyes, they might have their memory colored by what they saw on the video. So in cases like this, we generally want to get key witness interviews completed, and we're doing that as fast as we can. And then I think the video will be released.
So has this video been seen individually by any of these 5 officers who were fired, or the 2 firemen as well, or their counsel, or the police union?
Not to my knowledge, but we do know that the family of Tyre Nichols and their counsel was shown the video.
Will there be the full video provided once the concerns you have raised have been resolved in terms, and I understand completely the idea of not wanting to fatally compromise the investigation and to provide at least the avenue for the pursuit of justice. Is the intention to show the full footage? And is it coming from body cam footage? Is it coming from a police vehicle? Where is the footage coming from?
Well, it's already clear that there is some body cam footage. They were on-duty officers. I believe that the city will show enough footage so that people will see the entirety of the incident from the very beginning to the very end.
What does it tell you, and what should it tell the public, frankly, that you've got officers fired before this has even been released, before there's even been an assessment of charges to be made? And I note that I believe Memphis did change its policy with regard to issues surrounding the use of force, the duty to render aid, the duty to intervene, adopted less than a month after George Floyd's death. Is this somehow telling about the failure to do all of these things by each of these officers?
Well, so the fact that they were terminated means that the city made an administrative decision that the officers did not follow protocol, did not follow the guidelines, and it was a serious breach of those guidelines. We have a relatively new police chief. He's only been in office for about a year and a half. There were some changes made in response to the George Floyd incident. But, Laura, it takes a while to change a culture, and you can't just turn that on a dime. And so it may be that there's more to be done. And I'm hopeful that what silver lining there could be out of this tragic incident is it might open up a broader dialogue about police reforms.
One of the dialogues that it's really opening even more is the idea that oftentimes when we're talking about excessive force cases and the killing of an unarmed Black man or Black or brown person, it is a conversation around race and the racial dynamic and white officers who are alleged to have behaved in this way to create those conversations. Here we've got 5 Black officers. I've often said in my prosecution experience in the past, the color blue can trump every other color. What is the community in Memphis and in Shelby County more broadly saying about the fact that the race of these officers is the same as the race of the victim, Tyre Nichols? Is this a conversation that is stunning the people, or is it par for the course, knowing that blue can trump Black?
Well, certainly, I think people who are discussing this case in Memphis and Shelby County have taken note that the race of the officers involved and the race of the Mr. Nichols is the same. I think it might lead some to say, as I think the lawyer for Tyre Nichols' family has said, is that The really relevant consideration is the race of the citizen as opposed to the race of the police officer.
Do you expect charges in this case?
Well, so that's what I'm going to be deciding with my office based on the facts and the circumstances. I can't really say right now. I think it would be improper for me to say what I'm going to do or when we're going to do it. But I will tell you that we are expediting the considerations and expediting the investigation as much as possible. And it is possible that we may be able to make a determination around the same time frame in which we contemplate release of the video.
Has the Department of Justice or the FBI become involved? I know there are cases involved oftentimes where the Civil Rights Division is looking into whether the civil rights of the individual victim have been violated. We saw that in the case of, in my own home state of Minnesota, officers charged in the killing of George Floyd also being brought up on civil rights violations. Has that coordination begun?
Yes, yes, Laura, it has. The Department of Justice has already announced that they are getting involved. The FBI is cooperating in the investigation with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, who I called in so that it would be a truly independent investigation. I'm in regular contact with the U.S. Attorney here in Memphis, and we are collaborating on this. I myself used to be a U.S. Department of Justice civil rights lawyer before I was a federal prosecutor. And so I know that the federal part of the investigation will often take longer than the state part of the investigation. So I suspect that our office will render a decision well before the federal authorities make their decisions.
Often considered the backstop and looking to see, but continuously proactive. When we met, Steve, I knew we'd meet again one day, but I couldn't have imagined it'd be under these circumstances. Thank you for joining.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura.